Jason and Amanda Towe from Pursuing Truth Ministries in Blue Ridge, Georgia. We're coming to you today live from the Assembly of Yahweh in Cisco, Texas, where we've been part of a fabulous Family Builders Conference that we would highly recommend. But we're here today on an internet interview with Luke and Kayte Abaffy. Many of you remember them from the debut of the documentary The Way. And we're here to announce and to have an interview with them about the new upcoming documentary that they're about to release, where they paired up with 119 Ministries for this documentary that's called The Christmas Question. So we would like to welcome Luke and Kayte Abaffy to the interview here with us today.
Thanks for having us. It's good to see you guys.
I know it is.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys again. We can't wait to sit down and break bread together with you again soon. And we're missing you from the last time we had a chance to hang out. And I know lives have been busy for everyone. We've been extremely busy. You guys have been extremely busy. And we just wanted to come here today and talk to you about the upcoming film that's about to be released called The Christmas Question. Many people are on the edge of their seats. They're excited about what's going to happen. They have great expectations of what's going to happen. I know everybody they've talked to us about how excited that they are for this film because of the great work that they felt like you done through the Way documentary. So no pressure. The expectations are high.
I know, the pressure is all so high. It's like, all right, well, we got to just put something out then at least. We'll see if it's any good.
Oh, good deal. Well, we have some questions that we'll jump right in. First of all, I want to give you the opportunity. Just tell us about this film.
The film? Well, all right, I'll just tell a little background about the film, like why we're even making it. 119 Ministries reached out to us like 2 years ago, basically, and they said, hey, we're interested in making a documentary about the history of Christmas, basically, and especially like how that affects believers' lives. And are you interested? And at first we were like, I don't know. I mean, it's a big undertaking, and if we want to do it the way that we want to do it, ends up taking so much time and like years of your life to do. So originally I was like, I don't know if I want to ever do this thing again. But eventually we talked back and forth and decided, all right, yeah, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. And
we prayed too.
Yeah, of course. Oh my gosh. And so then we started making it. And so I'll just, I guess, give a brief description of it. The idea is to tell a true history that's very in-depth and also that touches on theological issues about Christmas. So we want to go more in-depth than like the History Channel's documentary and other sources, because a lot of times people will just interview a professor and then they'll give their opinion and that's it, and that it doesn't get to the truth. And so what we're trying to get to as close as we can is the historical truth of what happened about the date of December 25th and also about all the trappings that we have today with the Christmas holiday. Where'd they come from?
And I think that's a wonderful angle to come at, because so many people, like you said, they have so many different opinions, so many different truths of where this tradition of Christmas as we know today come from. And we have people who, it's all pagan, or no, it's not pagan, and this happened and this didn't happen. And I think the desire and the effort to dive deep into the reality and the truth from many different sources to bring hopefully some closure and some clarity to what happened. How did this come to be? What is Christmas about? How did it, manifest to what it is today? So I think that's awesome. So if you don't mind, we have some questions for you talking about this film, and kind of let you tell us in your own words as we ask these questions. Some of these questions have come from various places, along with people in our assembly. So let us ask you these questions, give you an opportunity to answer them in your own way, and the best that you can. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll jump right in. First question that we'll ask you then is this. There have been lots of books, even the History Channel, as you mentioned, documentaries about Christmas. What does this movie add that you're making? What does it add to the conversation?
That was my main question when they asked us to do it. That was my main, hold up. I thought, this has already been done. It's been done. It was done really well by Jim Staley. with the truth or tradition thing. And so this will be, what this will add to the conversation, I hope, is a balanced perspective, meaning we're going to tell both sides of the story, and that's very historically accurate. So we're going to go to experts in all of these fields, from like early Christianity to Aurelian the Emperor, to just like Sol Invictus and when the winter solstice celebrations, all of these things, we're going to the guys that are quoted by everyone else, and we're getting them to tell us what happened as far as we know. So what we're adding to the conversation, I think, and I hope, will be clarity.
Yeah.
It's as far as we can get it, because some things we can't get totally clear on, because this was 1,700 years ago that a lot of this stuff was happening, some of it 2,000 years ago, so some of it 4,000 years ago,
Yeah.
which we'll get into.
Wow.
I think also some dimension to the conversation, because often when you have historical documentaries, it's like one narrative, a voiceover, but here some of the points are debated by academics. So, in those cases, we want to show some of the people who studied this think this from the primary sources, and some think this, and present them both so that people can know, that maybe there's not a consensus on this issue. And then also, those films aren't often geared towards like Christians or believers. So this movie will kind of touch on the theological things that believers think about when they're evaluating where these Christmas traditions came from. So not just the history.
That's what would set it apart from a lot of books researching it. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
I'll let Amanda ask the next question here.
Okay, so another question we had is that you guys traveled quite a bit in making this film. Where did you go and who did you interview?
Well,
You should answer that.
okay. Katie didn't get to go everywhere with me because we have a new kid.
I was on baby duty.
He couldn't. He would interrupt everything, of course. So we had to, sadly. But she did rendezvous with me. So we went to England. We went all over England because that's where a lot of these guys are. And then we went to Germany. Some guys are there. We went to Norway to talk to a lady who talks to us about Yule celebrations. And then we went to Denmark on the way down to Germany to film some things at a museum. We went to Italy. And then we went to Canada, Winnipeg. Two of these guys are both in Winnipeg, of all places. And then we went around the United States. And so those are the places we went. It was mostly me, sadly. She came a couple times, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So, next question. Who, and I think you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but who is the target audience of this movie? And who do you think would really enjoy it? Who would benefit from it?
Do you want to do this?
Yeah, I think in general, anybody who's like curious, why is it that we do these things around the Christmas season? It's just a curious thing. So anyone who wonders about that, but more specifically Christians, like believers who are curious about things that we've always kind of just assumed, and maybe you haven't like looked underneath them before. And also people who are debating. Maybe they're like on the fence. Is this something that I want to fold into my family's life or not? Is there an alternative? Is there, where do these things come from? So that's the primary audience, I think.
The focused one would be people who are interested in researching why the church does the traditions that it does, or Christians do the traditions that they do.
And that kind of leads me, I was going to kind of ad lib a secondary question on top of that was, will this film, do you think, or do you hope that this film will actually give you some of the answers as to why it all matters? Because many people that we've talked to and we know in the world, they say, well, it doesn't really matter. And will this film address that question?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Christmas is... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's a big package of like emotions, memories, part of your relationship with God, stuff with your family, your traditions, like what you've always done, and then the history, is there too. So we tried to not just present things from one angle, but to take into account that there's a lot going on in people's heads and their minds when they're thinking about Christmas. Does it matter? Does God care where this stuff comes from? Is it redeemed? All kinds of things. And we try to touch on that stuff in the movie.
Yeah, some of these harder questions of all right, well, the days of the week are pagan. named after pagan gods. We're going to stop saying the days of the week. So these sort of things we will discuss in the film.
Wow.
Hopefully we get enough airtime for all that.
That's fantastic.
It's hard to squeeze all that into an hour and a half, but we are trying.
Good deal. So you are going to address the reality that even the names of the days of our week as we know them today root from a very bad origin.
Yeah, we'll mention that. We'll mention it and discuss that a little bit, and then is what's the difference between that and a holiday, a celebration like Christmas? And so we'll talk about that, which we could do now if you want.
Do you want to? Do you want to talk about that, or do you think we should wait?
Sure, why not? Yeah, all right. So I think the biblical conclusion that we don't try to come to conclusions for everyone, but we give a perspective. And so the perspective I think that we give is there's a difference biblically between having things that originated or stemmed or were created by pagans,
Right.
that are just in your life, like the days of the week, the days of the month, wedding rings. But then there is having a festival for the Creator or for Yeshua and saying that this is for Him and to honor Him. And in fact, I couldn't imagine being a Christian without celebrating Christmas, right? Isn't that how people feel?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so in having this sewn into your faith and saying it's for Him and about Him. And so there are verses in the Bible about this, about doing these things, worshiping God in the way that the nations worship their gods, and how He does not want us to do that. And so I think that's where we draw the line. I mean, that's the opinion we give.
Okay.
Good. And I think those are great points. Great points. So next question.
Well, you kind of touched on this, and you may have something you want to add. I don't know, about how you and 119 Ministries came to work together on this movie. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Well, I mean, they're great guys. And ladies. They're a great team over there. And they seem to be doing some interesting stuff, good stuff, and they thought it would be a good idea to do this. I think I would let them talk about this more. They had this sunburn teaching and took it down because I think they wanted to kind of redo it. And so for them, this is a redo of that.
Okay.
In a different format, a little bit. Yeah, they wanted to do something different from a teaching video, I think, and to make sure that everything cited, every source cited was like airtight, rock solid, and nothing speculative or anything. And I think it's cool that their ministry will go back and reevaluate things, like maybe we need to update this. They put out so much content, and I think that just to make a full film, they wouldn't have the bandwidth because they're constantly doing all these in-depth teachings. And so I guess they thought we could help with that so they could keep up, what their ministry already does and still put this out.
Well, I know that Jason and I have a lot of respect for their study work that they put into their ministry and how they put it out for a lot of people, that we don't have to do all the legwork that they do, and we get the benefits from it. So we have a lot of respect for 119 Ministries.
Yeah, man, we have the greatest respect for John Sherman and the guys at 119 Ministries. We've had the privilege of having John sit in our living room and spend the evening together and talking and just hearing his heart on the matters, all different matters of faith. And it's just amazing and so humble, such a humble spirit in what they do. It's just amazing. We can't thank them enough for the contribution that they give to this walk and trying to share the truth that so many of us have awakened to realize that there have been so many traditions in our life that we just took for granted as being untested truth. And it's just amazing the work they do. We can't say enough for it.
I agree. He's a brilliant guy. He's very clean thinking brain. Because he was an engineer. I should let him say all this. A systems engineer to get systems in place and make sure everything runs smoothly. And I think that's how his mind must work, because he seemed to take that towards his approach of the Bible. And so that's it's nice. Cool.
Yeah, it's just amazing the work they do. And like I said, their ministry as a whole is very dear to us, and we appreciate their contribution tremendously. And by the way, we were hoping that John could join us tonight, but he's under the weather a little bit, so he couldn't be with us. But we just want to give a shout out again to 190 Ministries and what they do. So now, the big question I think you've already answered, but for those who may not have seen it may not be so up to date on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, is the big question is, when does the film release and how can people watch it?
Well, it comes out December 19th, which is very soon.
Thursday.
And, which is, well, yeah. Anyway, and people can watch it for free on 119 Ministries YouTube channel, which is amazing. So they can watch it and share it with everyone. And we have DVDs and Blu-rays and digital downloads that have some special features. So yeah, if people are interested, or if your internet connection's weird or whatever and you need to download it, but yeah, it'll be up there for everybody to see. We'll be sharing the link on the website, christmasquestion.com, and also on our Facebook. Just search the Christmas Question and they can find it there.
Wow. So kind of a random question off the top of my head that comes to me now is that, so many people, know you and know us through the feature film you done, the Way documentary, which has touched so many people. And we're so grateful to have been a part of it. One question we have about this film comparable to that film is, what's the difference in maybe the format, about how the film is laid out? Is there a difference? Maybe you can elaborate briefly what the difference is between the way that the Way documentary that we were so privileged to be a part of and the this upcoming film, The Christmas Question. What's the difference in the layout and the format and the way it flows?
I think The Way is more of a story about people. I mean, then this is more of a story about Christmas.
It's like a history.
But we do have heroes, I mean, protagonists. Like, you guys were protagonists in The Way. We were telling your story, and your story was the story of other people. I mean, and it was amazing, and you guys are awesome. And so we have some other people who are going exploring Christmas. They're Christians exploring Christmas. And so that's our protagonist in this, but the majority of this is history.
Right.
So we try to tie in the story throughout, and that's what we're hoping will work to keep people interested. We don't want people to be bored watching it.
Another difference is that in The Way, we tracked with one story, like your story, for example, mirrored what a lot of other people were going through. And in this film, we track with people who are researching these traditions. We get a lot of history, but they don't all land at the same place at the end.
Oh,
so that's kind of another difference.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Question.
All right. Do you guys believe that this film adequately provides perspective from all major viewpoints?
I don't know. I hope so. I hope so. I don't know. I bet both viewpoints will say that it doesn't. But who knows? Maybe they'll both say it's great. I mean, I hope so. I want to give the perspective of both sides. But the hard thing is, even professors, it seems, not all of them, but some of them will have a bias before they go into their research. And so they're kind of looking for, okay, let's try and find a way, and this is just my view of what I see, find a way that can allow for a totally pure selection of December 25th, for example. A totally Christian selection that has no pagan influence at all. And so there's a lot of scholars who, I think, approach their research from that perspective. Or because it would really make a big splash in the Christian community and they'll get known. And so that, I think, and because there's research like that out there, I think it muddies the waters for a lot of people.
Wow. That's one of the battles, that I talked about with you in our initial interview that we always tried to come through when I was teaching the apologetics class for 2 years that I've done, is one of the things I said is when you come into that class, take off your spectacles of preconception, lay them aside, and let's see what does the Bible say. And what you've said is just exactly what I've done when it come with dealing with Sunday versus Sabbath, is that I broke my own rule. I went in looking in the scriptures with a preconceived idea that I was trying to prove or to verify what I currently accepted as truth, which was Sunday. And hopefully that people can take their spectacles of preconception off with this film. And, anytime we distribute the Way documentary to people, we always tell them, one of the first things I say is, do yourself a favor, bow your head and pray that you can remove the preconceptions from your mind. Look at this from an open-minded viewpoint, pray for clarity and guidance from the Holy Spirit, and verify it through the scriptures. And then watch the film and don't be eating anything that's easy to get choked on. That's kind of the way That's kind of the way I approached the film.
That's so funny.
I wish we had that inserted in every
know.
copy of the film. Like,
Jason's disclaimer.
yeah. And all right, so
funny.
to give our own disclaimer, I mean, of course, we have our own perspective. I mean,
Sure.
we think going into this, we think, all right, I think we know, I think we know where all this stuff came from. And then we tried to find out whether we were right or not. And I hope that we don't have too strong of a bias in it.
And I think because one perspective is told often, it's not. Sometimes you need to give air to or give voice to one that's not often heard, and I think
And ours is, I don't know.
And all the most common objections to things when it comes to Christmas traditions and what this means for Christians, we tried to include so that the conversation felt like it wasn't just lacking obvious things that someone might be thinking when they're watching it at home. Like, well, but what about this?
I hope. I mean, and did we succeed or not? You guys are going to have to tell us, honestly.
Well,
I have faith in you.
yeah, we have a lot of faith, man. And we're already getting people that haven't even seen this film yet. They're so excited in anticipation for the film to come out, the Christmas question, that the first question they ask is, "What are they doing next?" So be prepared.
My goodness.
So yeah, maybe you
I'm
found.
telling you, at the end of these projects, Jason, it's like it must be as close to giving birth, not physically, as possible. Because it's...
You're like, how could I ever do that again? But then you totally want to.
Not yet. No, at the end of this project, it's like,
ready
once
yet.
this is over, I don't want to just... I don't know if I ever want to make another documentary
Yeah,
again.
you
Well,
I don't know.
we're gonna pray for you that it's kind of like a woman who gives childbirth and they remember it right after it happens, and then soon they forget the pain and then they do it again because the world is.
Well, it already happened once, Jason. It already happened once.
Yeah, and
So
the
maybe
world.
it'll happen again.
Hey man, the world is crying out for you guys to continue the work that you're doing. I literally 5 minutes before we walked in this door, I said, "Do you have a question for these guys as we do this interview?" And this brother said, "Yeah, I have a question. What are they doing next?" He hasn't even seen the film, so which. Of course, trying to get back on track, we'll ask you a question because you kind of related to it in the last statement is, while making this movie, did your mind change about anything? About what you previously believed you understood to be true?
Did yours?
Yeah.
You go first,
yeah.
then.
Mine definitely did. I think there's a lot of in our meme culture, there's a lot of memes and stuff floating around that have diagrams and cartoons of this came from this, came from this, came from this. And not all of it's proven. Sometimes people are like, it's all from this, or it's all pagan, or da-da-da. And it's overly simplified from what we actually know from history. And sometimes as a believer, you can make the leap to say, yeah, I could see spiritually, with stuff going on, how this could have influenced this culture later on, it trickled down. But historically, academically, things might not be so cut and dry to just prove this definitely came from here. So it kind of tempered the way I would talk about stuff in the future.
Yeah, it's
not
like,
being
do
so
we have the evidence for this, or
simplistic
do
about
we
it.
just have inference?
Right.
And a lot of what we see online is inference. And I will say that most of what we see about specifically Mithras is inference. And so we don't get to talk much about Mithras at all in the film.
Really?
In the extra features, though,
Yeah.
we're going to have a deep dive into Mithras. I couldn't work it in, okay? It's not a sell. It's just, I couldn't work it in. I am still editing it. I'm just not going to have it done by the 19th. But it was like bringing something up just to kill it. So that's why we didn't keep Mithras in the film. So that was something
A
maybe.
lot of the ancient mythology things seem to be the things that it's easy to lean on when you're trying to draw the connections with Christmas, but it's maybe not as easy to prove those things because mythologies are oral, histories oftentimes, and they're often spoken, not written. They often vary, I don't know.
Gotcha. Cool. You want to ask this question?
All right. So, do you guys believe that this film will answer the questions of where our modern day traditions associated with Christmas come from?
It'll do a pretty good job of it, I think. It'll get, you know what it will do? It will tell what we know as a society about the traditions.
Yeah.
It will tell stories from this perspective and this perspective. And it'll say, this is what we know about, for example, the Christmas tree, which is one of the most heavily debated ones. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all right, so this is one thing that it may come from, and this is another thing. And Do we know? I don't know.
It'll
Not really.
say, these people were doing this with greenery on this day. Make what you will of that, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that this film maybe will clarify, there's some people that tend to go down the road that all of a sudden there's a pagan behind every tree and every bush. Does it kind of clarify that maybe that's not so cut and dry in the case, so to speak?
I hope so. I really hope that everyone will just, honestly, and we can't tell this in the film, really, but I want everyone to just, when they hear something, they want them to research it. And don't just go with the research that they find on one website. Or even Wikipedia. Really get into and try and find the original sources. We can all do this. I mean, I was telling Katie, anyone can do this whole. They can figure out everything that we talk about in the documentary.
Well, I feel like you got it's nice because he has the journalistic background, so he's knowing, how to, just thinking about getting to a primary source, like what was written at the time, or that kind of thing. And that's not always easy to turn up.
That's what we try and do. We try and do that. So I hope that,
Yeah, because
I'm not sure if I answered your question. So.
Yeah. Yeah, because so much that floats around out there about all aspects of the walk of faith, people don't research and dive deep enough to get into actual credible sources. They get opinions and skewed things that they don't actually dig in. They take someone's word for it, which is exactly how we got to where we are. Many things that we do today is stop taking people's word for it, and let's I think one of the things that Arthur Bailey said in the film The Way that we were in, he said, we have the same resource. When he was talking about our faith, he's talking about the Bible. Why have I let these people tell me what to believe or how to believe? And I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said, but he said, when I realized that I have a Bible, I have the same resource that they have. And we live in the information age where if you dig deep enough, just be careful, because, the accusation that you can't put anything on the internet that's not true is unfortunately not true. But, well, good. Well, I'll tell you what, I know you guys got a lot of work to do. We're so grateful that you would agree to do this interview, and we thought it was kind of ironic that we'd have an opportunity to interview you vice versa with us last time, and it's kind of fun to kind of put you in the hot seat, so to speak. But we're very excited about the film that's coming out. We are, we're sitting on the edge of our seat, waiting on this to release. One final question before we begin to close is, what is your ideal ultimate expectation for this film?
I hope that people who have been thinking about this and questioning it and then just kind of ignoring it will be inspired by the film to either keep researching it or just take the next step, and not just keep putting something off, because sometimes something is inconvenient or difficult to do, and we want to believe something so much, and it gets back into that confirmation bias thing where we want to hear confirmation of this thing that we hope is true, and that's everywhere because everyone's going to confirm, oh yeah, Christmas is just great.
Yeah.
But I hope that it will inspire people to do their own research, and also, if necessary, get rid of it.
There you go. That's great.
Yeah.
So, well, we can't thank you enough, and I don't think that even you guys realize the great impact that you've had on this awakening revival. What we call, Amanda and I refer to as that we believe is one of the greatest revivals that this world has seen in a long time. People waking up to the realities and truth of what the scriptures actually teach, and your position and your calling and the answering of that call into what you're doing is monumental, along with the work that the guys, again, commending the guys at 119 Ministries is just phenomenal. I don't think you guys know how much you matter to everybody out here that we talk to when we're beating the streets. And I know sometimes maybe you don't get the feedback because you're in 7 countries making another film, but beating the streets and talking to people on a day-to-day basis and having the opportunity to meet so many people, the impact that the way documentary made on so many people. Amanda and I hope one day we have the opportunity to sit down and just scroll through emails and messages that we've received. Literally thousands of people who have made statements for this is the thing that I needed to give me confirmation that what I was seeing was true, to all the way to this is the thing, this film is what I was able to show to my husband or my spouse or my son or my daughter that ultimately led them to the faith and just gave them clarity. I mean, just powerful stuff and testimonies that we literally wish you guys could have heard before the film was ever released. So we want to thank you for what you do, and we want to encourage you and pour words of affirmation and blessing over you to continue what you're doing. Ourselves, we're excited because in closing, we are at our ministry, Pursuing Truth Ministries in Georgia. When we get back home this coming Sabbath on December the 21st, we're going to be offering a viewing, the debut of the Christmas Question at our Sabbath service. So anybody that might be watching this film, if you're in the proximity and you would like to come and visit, reach out to us, on email, Facebook or something. Reach out to us. Email address will be pursuingtruthministries@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, by our ministry. So if anybody's out there, they're interested in watching this film and they're curious, we want to encourage you to come and watch and see this film with us, and of course, leave it in your hands at the end, whoever may be viewing, to what do you do with this information now that you have it. So
You'll have to tell us if they throw tomatoes at the screen.
Our prayer is that because it's amazing. You put out what the world would view as such a controversial film, being the Way documentary. But yet, of the thousands of responses that we received, even people who watched it and maybe just didn't believe it because they didn't want to believe it, they didn't want to see it, they didn't want to look into it, is the reality is we know of one church that this film got passed from person to person to person to person to person. So many people in the church, in this traditional mainstream church, watched it, but yet gave no negative feedback. And the lack of negative feedback has been what we found was so profound in the power that was behind this film, which we know ultimately is our Creator that blessed this film as it went forth.
1,000%.
It's interesting when we make any of these projects, we feel His hand in them, making things work.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
We're so excited and can't wait till we can watch it on Thursday, and we'll definitely give you our feedback.
okay, good. Thank you.
Well, guys, again, thanks for coming on and doing this interview with us. It's been a pleasure. And with that being said, everybody have your screen ready and be ready on December the 19th. We're super excited for what's going to happen. So with that being said, we thank you guys for coming on, and we'll call that a wrap.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you both.
Thank you. You guys have a blessed day.